The words hit me like a knife to the chest. "You're a liar, Mom. You never loved me." I stood frozen in the middle of our small kitchen, my hand still gripping the dish towel, my heart pounding like it wanted to escape. "My name is Laura, I'm 42 years old, and my son Ethan has been my whole world since the day I first held him. I raised him on my own with nothing but honesty, love, and the promise that no matter how hard life got, he could always trust me." But that day all of it shattered. He stood there, his face red with anger, his eyes full of something I had never seen before, hatred. "You've lied to me my whole life," he spat, throwing his phone on the table. "You never told me the truth about who I am." I took a step toward him, my voice trembling. "Ethan, what are you talking about? I've never lied to you." Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video. He laughed bitterly. "Don't. I know everything now. She told me. Grandma said you kept the truth from me for 16 years. I felt the ground tilt under me. My mother. My own mother had been whispering things into my boy's ear, planting poison where love used to live. What did she tell you?" I asked, my voice breaking. He glared at me, fists clenched. "That you're not my real mom. That you kept me because you were lonely. That you never loved me, you just wanted someone to need you." The words cut deeper than any blade ever could. My knees nearly gave out, but I forced myself to stand tall, to breathe through the pain. "Ethan, that's not true. You are my son. You are my heart." But he wouldn't look at me. He turned away, his voice low and broken. "I don't believe you anymore. You're just a liar." That night, he locked himself in his room. And I sat alone in the dark, my hands shaking, my mind replaying every bedtime story I'd read him, every scraped knee I'd kissed better, every "I love you" I thought he believed. I had given him everything, my time, my strength, my truth, and yet somehow someone had convinced him it was all a lie. And as I sat there staring at the closed door of his room, I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. Someone had hidden something from both of us. Something buried in the past, something I had never been allowed to know. And when my son found it, it would change everything forever. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of me. My hands trembled with a mix of fear and heartbreak. Every word Ethan had thrown at me last night echoed in my mind like a cruel song I couldn't stop hearing. Liar, not my real mom, never loved me. For 16 years I had woken up every day with one goal. To give that boy a life full of love and truth, to make sure he never felt unwanted or unloved, to protect him from every shadow I could. And now, he looked at me like I was the very shadow that had been haunting him. I heard his bedroom door creak open, slow and cautious. I turned, desperate to see some trace of my son, the boy who used to hug me every morning before school. But his eyes were different now. They were guarded, cold. He didn't sit. He just stood there, arms crossed, and said, "Where are they?" "Where are what?" I asked, my voice soft, afraid to push him further away. "The papers," he snapped. "The adoption papers Grandma said you kept hidden. She said you were too scared to tell me the truth." I felt my stomach drop. My mother had never accepted my decision to adopt Ethan. Back then, when I was 26, she said I was making a mistake, that taking in someone else's child would only end in heartbreak. I never imagined she would be the one to cause that heartbreak herself 16 years later. "Ethan," I said carefully, "I never hid anything from you. I told you I would explain everything when you were ready. When you asked. Grandma had no right to." "Stop lying." His voice cracked like glass. "She showed me proof. She said my real mom wanted me. But you stole me." My knees nearly gave out at those words. I had fought so hard to give him a home because his birth mother, God bless her broken heart, had been unable to keep him safe back then. I had gone through every legal channel, every court, every tear-filled night, to make sure Ethan would never feel abandoned again. And now someone had twisted that story into a nightmare. He stormed past me, searching drawers, pulling files from the cabinet, throwing papers to the floor. His hands were shaking as much as mine. Finally, at the very bottom of an old folder, he found the sealed envelope I had kept all these years, his adoption papers. He ripped it open, eyes scanning the words like they were a weapon he had waited his whole life to find. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my chest, tears stinging my eyes as I watched his face change. At first there was anger, fire burning bright. But as he read further, it shifted to confusion. Then something softer, something heavier. His lips trembled. His hand lowered slowly. He whispered, almost too quiet to hear. She signed me away? I swallowed hard, stepping closer. Ethan, she loved you. But she couldn't keep you safe. She made the hardest choice a mother could make, to let me give you the life she couldn't. I never wanted you to think you weren't wanted. I wanted you to know you were loved twice as much, by her and by me. He looked up at me then, tears streaming down his face, his voice small and broken. Why didn't you tell me sooner? My own tears fell freely now. Because I wanted you to grow up knowing who you are, my son, my heart, before you learned the pain of how you came to me. I wanted the truth to feel like love, not like loss. He shook his head slowly, overwhelmed. Grandma said you lied. She said you just used me. I took a shaky breath, my voice trembling but firm. I would die for you, Ethan. Every choice I made was to protect you. I have never lied about my love for you. He stared down at the papers again, his fingers tracing the words his birth mother had written. I entrust my son to Laura James. Please give him the life I cannot. More tears fell from his eyes, silent and endless. Finally, his voice broke in half as he whispered, I don't know what to believe anymore. I reached for him, not sure if he would let me, and whispered back, believe in what you've always felt here, I said, pressing a hand gently over his heart. The love you've known your whole life? That's real, Ethan. That's the truth no one can rewrite. He didn't answer. He just stood there shaking, holding the papers, his whole world spinning between lies and truth. And in that moment, I knew this fight wasn't just against my mother's poison. It was a fight for my son's heart, for the bond we had built all these years. And I wasn't about to lose it without showing him the full story, the real story, that had been buried for 16 years. That night, after Ethan went to his room clutching those papers like they were his last lifeline, I sat on the couch with my head in my hands. My heart felt like it had been torn open, raw and bleeding. The silence of our home had never felt so heavy. I couldn't let him live in this half-truth, poisoned by my mother's lies. Tomorrow everything had to come out, the full story, every detail of how I fought to be his mother, every sacrifice, every tear shed in hospital hallways and courtrooms. He deserved to know the truth that had been buried for 16 years. Understand for the next morning. I woke up early and found him sitting at the kitchen table. His eyes were red, his face pale. He looked like a boy lost in a storm. My heart ached just looking at him. Ethan, I said softly, sliding into the chair across from him. We need to talk. No more pieces of the truth. You deserve everything. He didn't look up, just muttered. Grandma said my birth mom wanted me. She said you lied and took me away from her. His voice cracked on the last word. I swallowed hard, holding back my own tears. Ethan, I never stole you. I couldn't even dream of doing something so cruel. When you were born, your mom was only 18. She loved you deeply. But she was in a dangerous place. The man she was with hurt her, hurt everyone around him. She was terrified you'd grow up in a life of pain and fear. So she made a choice no mother should ever have to make. I reached over and placed my hand on his, even though he didn't grab it back. She found me through an adoption agency. She sat in that hospital bed, holding you for the last time. And she told me, please love him like I would if I could. Please keep him safe. Ethan, she didn't give you away because she didn't want you. She gave you away because she wanted you to live. Tears spilled from his eyes, silent at first. Then faster. She said that? His voice was trembling like a child again, not the angry teenager from yesterday. I nodded, my own tears falling now. I promised her I would tell you when you were ready. I kept every letter she wrote for you. I never wanted you to think you weren't wanted. You were loved before you even took your first breath. And you were loved every day after by me. He stared at me, his eyes wide and searching. Letters? What letters? I stood and walked to my bedroom, pulling out a small wooden box from under my bed. My hand shook as I carried it back to him. These, I said, placing it on the table. She wrote them for you. Birthdays, milestones. Every year, she sent a letter for you to read someday. Ethan opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were 16 sealed envelopes, each with his name written in careful handwriting. He picked up the first one, the one marked, "For my baby boy on his first birthday." He opened it slowly, reading the words aloud in a shaky whisper. Ethan, Mommy loves you more than the sun and moon combined. I can't hold you today, but you are my heart forever. Be kind, be brave, and know you are loved beyond measure. He broke then, sobbing quietly, clutching the paper to his chest. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him the way I had the day I first brought him home from the hospital. I wanted you to read these when you could understand, I whispered. I never lied about love, Ethan. I only tried to give you a life filled with it. For the first time in days he hugged me back, his arms tight around my neck. Through his sobs he whispered, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry I called you a liar. I kissed the top of his head, tears soaking my cheeks. It's not your fault, sweetheart. Someone told you a story that wasn't true. But now you know the truth. And nothing can take that from us. We sat there for hours reading letters. Each one told a piece of his birth mother's love, each word stitching his broken heart a little closer together. By the end, he looked at me with new eyes, not confused or angry, but full of pain, love, but something fragile yet hopeful. But one thing still burned in me, a question I could no longer ignore. Why had my own mother done this? Why had she taken my son's trust and twisted it into hate? That evening I drove to her house. I walked in without knocking, my hands shaking but my voice steady for the first time in years. Why? I demanded. Why would you do that to me? To him. She didn't even look ashamed. Because I told you it was a mistake, she said coldly. He's not your blood. You should have had your own child. I wanted him to know the truth before you ruined his life anymore. I stood there, stunned at her cruelty. You didn't tell him the truth, I said sharply. You told him your hate. And you almost destroyed the one thing in this world that matters most, my bond with my son. She scoffed, turning away. But I didn't let it end there. You don't get to decide what family means. Blood isn't what makes you a mother. Love does. And that's something you've never understood. I walked out of that house knowing I might never see her again. And for the first time I was okay with that. Because family isn't who you're born to. It's who fights for you, who stays, who loves you through every storm. That night, Ethan and I sat on the porch, the letters spread between us like a bridge reconnecting what had been broken. He leaned his head on my shoulder and whispered, Mom, you've been my real mom all along. And in that moment every scar, every sleepless night, every tear I had shed was worth it. Because love, the real kind, had finally spoken louder than every lie. For the first time in days my house felt like home again. Ethan was asleep in his room, the letters from his birth mother stacked neatly on his bedside table. His face looked peaceful, not twisted with anger or confusion anymore. But I knew our journey wasn't over yet. A few days of truth couldn't erase the pain of lies that had been planted for years. I stayed awake that night, sitting on the couch with a blanket wrapped around me, thinking about everything we'd been through. 16 years of love. And yet it only took a few poisoned words to nearly destroy it all. I promised myself that this would never happen again. I wouldn't let my son grow up questioning if he was wanted, if he was loved. I would make sure that every day from now on he knew the truth, felt the truth in his heart. The next morning, Ethan came into the kitchen, his hair messy, his eyes still a little puffy from all the crying we'd both done the night before. He hesitated like he wasn't sure how to act around me anymore. My heart broke a little at the sight. But I smiled softly and said, Good morning, sweetheart. Pancakes. For the first time in days he nodded. Yeah, pancakes would be nice. We sat at the table eating in silence at first. But it wasn't the heavy, painful silence from before. It was the kind of quiet that feels like healing, a space where words weren't needed to know love was still there. After breakfast, Ethan asked if we could read more letters. So we did. We spent the whole morning going through the box, one envelope at a time. Some letters were short, some long, some stained with what I knew were his birth mother's tears. Every one of them carried love, a reminder that his life had always been precious, never a mistake. At one point, Ethan looked up at me with tears in his eyes and whispered, "She really loved me, didn't she?" I cupped his face in my hands. "She loved you enough to give you a safe life. And I have loved you every single day since. You were never unwanted, Ethan. You were chosen twice." This time he hugged me first, holding on like he didn't want to let go. That hug was worth every sleepless night I had spent wondering if we'd ever get back to this place. A few weeks later, I made another decision. I didn't want Ethan growing up with half-truths or hidden pain. So I arranged for him to meet his birth mother. It was a big step. And I knew it would be emotional for everyone. And I wanted Ethan to see with his own eyes that love had always surrounded him, even in ways he didn't know. The day finally came. We met in a quiet park. I watched from a distance as a nervous young woman, now in her 30s, but still carrying the weight of that long-ago choice, approached him slowly. When their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them. She knelt down, tears already streaming down her face, and whispered, "Hi, baby boy." Ethan hesitated for a second and walked into her arms. They cried together for a long time, words not needed because the truth was already there, beating in their hearts. When they finally sat down to talk, I joined them. For the first time, all three of us sat in the same circle of love that had always been there, even when the world tried to convince us otherwise. Months passed, and slowly Ethan changed. The anger faded, replaced by a quiet confidence. He still had questions, but now he had answers. Now he understood that family isn't about blood or lies. It's about who stands by you, who loves you without conditions, who chooses you again and again. One evening we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Ethan leaned against me and said softly, "Mom, I'm sorry I believed her. I'm sorry I hurt you." I kissed his hair and whispered, "I forgive you, Ethan. None of this was your fault. Love can't be broken by lies, it just gets tested sometimes." He looked up at me, his eyes full of emotion. "You really are my mom, aren't you? No matter what." Tears filled my eyes as I pulled him close. "Always. Forever. Nothing will ever change that." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: peace. We had walked through fire, but we came out stronger, closer, unshaken in our love for each other. Moral of the story: truth may be hidden, twisted, or delayed, or love cannot be erased. Real family is built on sacrifice, honesty, and choosing each other every single day, not on blood alone. Lies can break trust, but it is true, will always find a way to heal what was broken. Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video.